Hi Year 10s, so we're going to be looking at the poem The Emigree by Rumens. It's certainly an interesting poem that relates to the theme of identity. Now, this poem is quite interesting because you can interpret a number of different ways, and the idea of interpretation is quite important here as well, because the ideas that I might have or I might bring to it, you might build on that, or you may even have different ideas. But Rumens certainly has ingrained within this poem a sense of, there is a sense of vagueness to it. You are allowed and you are encouraged to bring to it different kind of interpretations, your ideas. Now, before we delve into the poem itself, it's always good to look at the title of a poem. It's a neglected part of poetry analysis that we don't really focus on the title as much, but it's a good starting point because it indicates what the poem could be about, the themes of the poem. So if we look at the poem The Emigree, it's derived from the word the immigrant, okay, or immigration. Now, as you know, immigration refers to the idea of displacement, of traveling from one place that you may call home to another, due to kind of political upheaval, to kind of civil unrest, war, a number of different things. Now, one of the interesting things about the title is it's quite a generic title. The Emigree, the emigrant. It's not speaking about a specific journey that a person has made or a community of people have made. It's quite a generic title, which kind of hints towards this poem relating to a universal story of immigration. This poem it's going to relate to the many and myriad of different kind of immigrations or emigrations that have taken place. This title also refers or is derived from the root word, which is a feminine word. Okay, and this can also hint towards the speaker of the poem being being a female. So let's read the first stanza, and once we've done that, we can actually look at the lines in the poem. So, there was once a country, I left it as a child, but my memory of it is sunlight clear, for it seems I never saw it in that November, which I am told comes to the mildest city. The worst news I receive of it cannot break my original view, the bright filled paperweight. It may be at war, it may be sick with tyrants, but I am branded by an impression of sunlight. So firstly, the first line is quite interesting, the way it starts off. There was once a country, because it starts off like a fairy tale. Now, this could hint towards the poem being an imaginary place, as all places that we have left behind and are in the past, imaginary. But it can also relate or hint towards this place being quite an innocent place for this person, as fairy tales are stories that are usually, or on the face of it, quite innocent. But fairy tales also, quite interesting enough, have darker kind of undertones to it, and I think you can see that throughout the poem, and we'll come to that, where the speaker has a really strong view of this place being beautiful, but also there's kind of darker undertones to it. So she says, I left it as a child, but my memory of it is sunlight clear. Again, here there's the use of the word sunlight clear, or the metaphor could suggest that this place is something that is really clear in her mind. She's got a really strong impression of this place. But a sunlight can also hint towards this place being a memory which is filled with warmth. Maybe this is a place that she obviously she thinks of it as home, but where she was accepted, where she might have family. So you'll see that again and again, how this place is referred to in positive terms. And you may even say that this is a city which she views in an idealized way. So she talks about it being, so she says it's sunlight clear. I never saw it in that November, which I am told comes to the milder city. Now, November, as we know, is a month where, the weather changes, maybe for the colder, maybe for the darker. So there's a hint towards this city not being the most positive, may have negative aspects to it, such as, again, there may be kind of war, there may be kind of some sort of unrest, some sort of anxiety that's taken place or taken hold of that city. The worst news of it, I cannot break my original view, the bright-filled paperweight. So she refuses to think of this place other than in the most positive way, and she uses the metaphor bright-filled paperweight. Again, we can really think and explore about this metaphor she uses, because when you think about a paperweight, it's something that's quite sturdy, it's something that's quite strong. Okay, so it might refer to her memory being quite strong within her, but a paperweight also, it's quite fragile because it can break and smash. It's made out of glass, so the memory of it can also be, it can be something that's quite strong within her, but can also be quite fragile and it can be broken at any time. It may be at war, so there's a definite hint towards this place facing a lot of conflict, maybe sick with tyrants. Here you've got the personification of this city being sick, and again you will see later on as well that the city is personified again and again. So there's a sense that there's disease within this city. There's things beyond the surface which might be something that shows the city to be dying with inside. And if you think about currently as well, this sickness might refer to things such as racism. It could refer to things such as kind of war, exclusion. But she also says, I'm branded by an impression of sunlight, again reinforcing the idea that this place is beautiful. Now, I want to hone into that word and that metaphor, branded. Now, when something is branded, it's quite a painful process, but it's also it shows that this place, or if you're branded by something, it's something deeply ingrained within you. It's something that stays with you, is permanently done to you. So there's a sense of her having this place in her mind, in her conscience, permanently, but it can also be quite a painful experience. So again, you've got the two kind of ideas of it being a beautiful place, but there might be something darker lingering beneath that. Okay, so the second stanza: the white streets of that city, the graceful slopes glow even clearer as time rolls its tanks, and the frontiers rise between us close like waves. The child's vocabulary are carried here like a hollow doll, opens and spills a grammar. Soon I shall have every coloured molecule of it. It may now be a lie, banned by the state, but I can't get it off my tongue. It tastes of sunlight. So again, in the first couple of lines, you've got an idea of this place being beautiful, being idealized. The white streets, the graceful slopes glow even clearer. So even as the persona hears news of of the place that she was born in, she has come from, as being torn apart by war, it becomes more beautiful to her. there's a sense of it being a nostalgic place, a place which she remembers really fondly. But there's what's quite interesting as well is the use of the word white, because white obviously refers to color, and I think Rumens does something quite interesting with color, which you will see later on in the poem, where right now the word white, the white streets, refers to it being a nice, a beautiful, a positive place, a place where she may even be accepted. So there's a sense of there being a barrier between the persona and the place. There's frontiers that rise between us, barriers. There's things that go between her and this place, and she uses the metaphor close like waves. So close like waves, it's something, you know, waves, it can be something that whisks you away. It can be a powerful thing. Again, waves can really be harsh, right? Okay, and she goes on to say that that child's vocabulary are carried here like a hollow doll. Now this simile is quite interesting because the child's vocabulary, she remembers the language, and it's quite interesting. We looked at if you have a brother or sister in year 9, they would have looked at a story which looks at, recently about language, and how in terms of language, it's something that, you know, you carry with you. You may not fully understand it, the language that you've learned from your from the culture in which you were born into. It may be hollow, so you may not fully understand it, but it's something that you cherish like a doll. So the simile kind of hints towards the persona's relationship to her language, and she talks about it. It opens and spills like a grammar. It's quite spontaneous whenever she might read it or whenever she might speak it. There's spontaneous bursts of her kind of cherished memories coming back. But she wants to hoard this memory. Soon I shall have every coloured molecule of it. She wants to hoard and take and grasp every little bit of it. She can't get enough of her culture. There's a burning desire within her to try and understand, to possess this language, this culture, which is also hinted by the idea of the doll which you possess, lovingly perhaps, or maybe too lovingly, maybe overburdened in terms of loving it too much and over-possessing it. So she says her language, it may now be a lie, banned by the state. Banned by the state. It could be a lie, something that is not used anymore, something that could be wiped off the dictionary altogether, outlawed. But I can't get it off my tongue. So again, she can't get, you know, she really feels like this is something that she really desires. And it's interesting because the line here is repeated again. Sorry, I've just not shown you the annotations that I did, but I'm sure they make sense now. She repeats the word, a taste of sunlight, and from the first stanza as well, there's an impression of sunlight. So there's a sense that she refuses to think of her culture, of her language, as being other than something that's quite positive. One thing to note about the kind of structure as well is that there's no clear rhythm. Okay, there's no clear rhyme. Now this could suggest the sense of this place being, that she remembers quite big, you know, it could refer to her mind being quite unsettled, and we definitely get a feeling of that. Okay, moving on to the third stanza. I have no passport, there's no way back at all, but my city comes to me in its own white plane. It lies down in front of me, docile as paper. It comb its hair and love its shining eyes. My city takes me dancing through the city of walls. They accuse me of absence, they circle me. They accuse me of being dark in their free city. My city hides behind me, they mutter death, and my shadow falls as evidence of sunlight. So here you've got a sense, I have no passport, there's no way back at all. There's a sense, again, the barrier is more stronger now. She is definitely excluded here. She is somebody who has no passport, and it speaks to or hints to a sense of displacement, but not belonging anywhere. And if you look into the idea of hybridity, the idea of belonging nowhere but being part of different places, having different identities, can be quite a painful experience, a confusing experience. So there's no way back at all. There's a sense of finality. There's no way that she can go back to this place. Maybe she is not accepted here anymore. Maybe it will be dangerous for her to go back anymore. But her city keeps coming back, and it comes back in its white plane and lies down in front of me, docile as paper. There's a sense of it being quite obedient, docile. This word suggests. It lies down in front of me. It's something that will always be willing, subservient to her, will always be kind towards her. And again, that sense of personification, as if it's, a loving kind of puppy. This city is kind of a loving puppy for her. I comb its hair and love its shining eyes. So again, this use of personification as if she is a parent giving the sense of love and affection towards the city. That's a child she takes care of. Now, my city takes me dancing through the city of walls. So there's this interesting contrast here of dancing and walls, because dancing evokes the sense of freedom and a sense of liberation and a sense of expression, right? But then the city of walls suggests there's a sense of barrier, there being a barrier after barrier after barrier. Now, you may even think about there being two places now. And it's quite clear that the idea, the city that she once remembered, maybe was once true, is very different to the city that now exists, which is full of barriers and things that exclude people. So they accuse me of absence. They circle. It's quite important now to think about the personal pronoun they. Who are they? Now, when you use that pronoun, it implies a distinction, a separation between you or we and them. So there's definitely a sense of difference between the persona of the poem and the people that now are in charge of the city. Now they accuse me of absence. They circle me. There's a sense of kind of threat, a sense of being attacked. They accuse me of being dark in their free city. Now, this is quite interesting. As I mentioned to you before, in the second stanza, she refers to the street as being quite white. And when we think about the colour white, obviously we think of it as being quite positive. But here there's a sense of play on the words here, because they accuse her of being dark, right? And if she is dark, she may not kind of fit into the white streets of that city. So there's a sense of the colour in the poem referring to a sense of kind of exclusion and separation. And as we know, when you accuse someone of being dark, it could also be a racist term. She may suffer from racism. Okay, and dark it might not just mean black. It could be different as well. It could be any kind of difference. And this idea of free city, it's quite mockingly said, isn't it? It could be quite ironic. And it's interesting as well, because if we look around the world today, We think of many kind of democracies that don't really act like very democratically. They actually profess to be democratic, but actually they're very totalitarian. They could be very they could clamp down on a lot of civil liberties. So there's a sense of hypocrisy there. Now, my city hides behind me. Again, the use of personification. This persona kind of trying to protect her city. They mutter death. Again, the sense of threat. My shadow falls as evidence of sunlight. Now, this is quite interesting, and you may have different interpretations of this last line, but from my own interpretation, I think, my shadow falls as evidence of sunlight. So her shadow is something that could protect the city. So as her city hides behind her, she's protecting it. But her shadow falling can also suggest the sense of death for the persona as well, as if she falls at the end. She does not survive at the end, and this again is an interesting way of ending the poem, but it's definitely up for interpretation. Now, that's what I think about the poem. Just a few other things in terms of links to other poems. I think this poem does well in terms of linking to Kamikaze. I'm just going to read out a couple of things here, and I think that are quite relevant. So both are about outcasts, a shunned father in Kamikaze and an exile in the Emigree. Okay, both present details of relationships, one between a person in the homeland and the other between a father and his family. So both are about relationships being excluded. Both use unrhymed stanzas. Neither has a strong rhythmic pattern. Both use an everyday conversational style of speech. Both mention powerful sense of impression of color. So there's you can really compare the use of color that is being used in both poems. And Rumens, although she makes great use of simile and metaphor in the poem, both poets use figurative language, so you can definitely compare those things. Just a few differences before we finish. So Kamikaze is told by using a third-person narrative. The Emigree uses first person, although the speaker may be fictional and not Rumens herself. And although it's not clearly regular, Rumens does use an irregular pattern of around 5 stresses in each line. And Garland makes sparing use of metaphor and simile, but Rumens makes use of simile too. Okay, so there's a couple of similarities and differences there. Now, hopefully this was quite beneficial to you, but definitely what I would like you guys to do is to really bring your ideas to the poem, your thoughts and ideas, and do research as well. Look at different kind of pieces of writings around the poem or analysis, and annotate. I hope that was useful, Year 10s, and thank you very much.